I want to talk about Ukraine. A lot of my friends ask me about Ukraine. They know I've been there 3 times pre-war. They know that my web developers are there. Some of my friends have met you, have heard of you, and my developers and whatnot. I'm going to jump in deep. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Are you okay with this?
Yes.
Okay.
If we're going to cry, we'll cut it out.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. And if you do, that's cool. A month ago or so, I was on the phone with my web developer at your previous company. And I said, how's it going? Like, we're finished with work. How are you guys doing? And, you know, like, very typical male Ukrainian, like, we're tough guys. You know, you get used to it. I'm like, how do you work with the bombs, the missiles coming in, the missile sirens? And he's like, yeah, you just get used to it. And I'm like,
You do.
Do you really?
And the most fascinating stuff here is that you don't need a lot of time to get used to it. I went there last year for just 1 month, and I got used to it like this. I remember the first nights, it was like, and you, as when you come there, you don't really know all the things you are supposed to do compared to people who went through it from the beginning till the end. But it's like, for example, the first nights when there were drones and there were air raids, I was sleeping. And then like the next day, I remember we came into the office and my friend Julia, she was saying like, oh, we were like, we knew you're alone. And like, this is your first night alone. And there were explosions. And then we were thinking that you're freaking out there. And I'm like, actually, I was sleeping. I didn't hear anything.
Well, that's fortunate. You were probably just tired.
But the next days, of course, like I think like the next days were fine too. So you can see this projector out of your window searching for drones. It's like when the air raid starts. So it works for a couple like of minutes and then it goes off. And then, but you can see the projector. And then we have on the phones, you get these alarms and to your phone, so you know that something's going on. And then you go to the chats in our messenger that really notifies you of things that can be. Is it a ballistic missiles, or this is just the rockets, or this is drones? What's happening? Or this is a combination of stuff.
So when I was talking to him, I said, and I won't say his name. Hopefully he's okay with being anonymous, but I guess that's the preference.
Yeah.
Given the individual especially. I said, what's the closest a missile has landed and exploded to your apartment?
Mine is very close.
He said, he said 300 meters, which I'm thinking is ridiculously close. I know yours is closer.
Yeah, so we had like, here's my house, and then there are 2 or 3 houses more, and then we have a big mall.
Shopping mall.
And the missile hit the mall. And I remember all the houses in front of us and even behind us lost their windows because of the wave.
The shoppers blew the windows out.
Yes, ours was fortunate. Our house was like okay, and our windows were also okay. Thanks God, we didn't have to take care of this being here. But yeah, that was. And then it was like, you know, when you go through this mall, when I went there when I came back to Ukraine, it's such like weird feeling because you see half of it was still out of order. And you're like, oh my God, this happened right here. Like, so it's like, you know, a very, like the realization that something like this is happening right next to you. Because when you hear it from the news or you hear it like from someone else telling you this, you're like, oh wow, that's fascinating. But this is
some other people,
but this is entirely different feeling when you see it. Or, for example, when you go into the elevator and you see these boxes that during the war, especially the first months, they shut off the electricity very often because they so you could get stuck in the elevator. And you have these rescue boxes there with the food or with the water, and it's like so that if you're stuck, you have something to eat or drink. And then you're like, this is like the direct like reality of what's going on. It brings you to reality, yes, because even you understand that there's war, you're still like very far from it. But this like just puts you into the reality. This is happening.
2014. That's a critical year your Ukraine history, right? Tell me about that, like just real briefly, because I would summarize it, but I'm afraid I'll get it wrong. Tell me about 2014 real quick.
So when the Crimea, you mean, was lost, so we had this revolution, which is we call European Revolution, but it's actually another name is Revolution of Dignity. And yes, it all started with the Ukraine wanting to join European Union, but our president Yanukovych kind of stopping it and saying, we kind of changed our minds. So and then it forced a lot of people going out, and it would have just ended there if they didn't beat up all people that came out, and most of them were students, and everybody they beat up our kids, and it everybody started going on. So the next day it was twice more, and then in a week it was 3 times more. So it ended for us the good way. So the revolution won, and Yanukovych escaped to Russia, to Rostov. But Russia used this time when we had no government and we had the mess to bring their troops into Crimea. And they first were they said, we're not there. This was a very common narrative that we're not there. These are not our soldiers. These are just people in the uniform. We have no idea who they are. They didn't wear their the signs that would tell that they're Russians. And then yes, and this is how they took over the Crimea. And then afterwards they started right in Donbass and Luhansk doing the stuff they started doing.
2014 to say COVID. So we'll say COVID is another line that something happened. Yeah. Right? Something happened.
There's so many things happened. we can go back to when I was born, because then the Chernobyl happened.
Yeah. Tell me about your relationship with your father.
Yeah.
Okay. That was an inside joke. 2014 to 2020 now, you're growing your firm. About how many people did you have working with you in 2014, roughly?
In 2014,
I want to say 20.
Did we already have a Kiev office? I don't think so.
No.
We were still, Revolution, we were still in Zaporizhia.
Yeah.
I think we had 50 at maximum, if not less. Yeah, if not less.
Yeah, I was thinking 30.
Up to I think 30, 35,
something
but below 50 for sure.
How did the revolution impact your business?
Actually, surprisingly, it was not a big impact.
Okay.
Of course, a lot of people were asking what is happening, but since there was the thing in our industry and in my previous company was it's interruption of business. You can't have interruption of business. So as long as you're working, that's fine. As long as developers come and work, that's fine.
The projects are getting done.
Yeah, the projects are getting done. You show the progress, so everything's okay, and then you get the communication with the client. So you're always on the but communication in general is very important in outsourcing business, because you guys are here, we're across the ocean, and they're like, are they real? Do they have office? All these concerns. Right. So you have to be in communication, in touch all the time. So it was not a big deal. So we were just going through it, and it was honestly, people were not very particularly interested in it, because it's just things happening in some country. At that time, no one knew Ukraine. Everybody was thinking it's part of Russia. So being honest, right?
Okay, so you're growing the company. How many employees did you have, say, right before COVID, 2019?
I think it was 150 or closer to 200. There was a lot of already.
150 to 200, right?
Yes.
And web development.
We had 2 offices, one in Zaporizhia and one in Kiev. And it was, I remember we not just moved, but we were for a while in this big office that we've always dreamed of, with the...
I went there. It was nice. I liked that office.
You did?
You had a foosball table.
We did, but we always had it.
You always had it. Right.
That's the first thing you buy when you open an office with developers.
Right. Toys.
Yeah.
Right. And when did you sell the company? What year was that?
In the also the same year as COVID,
right.
In the end of this year. So if it was 2020, then officially the deal was closed in 2021.
Right. Okay.
In February, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah, but this was the reason why I sold. It's because the COVID was so complicated. I know it from the business perspective, don't do that. It's not a smart decision after crisis to sell the company. But even though we were giving somehow better terms of, the multiplier.
We've had several conversations about Ukraine and Russia and people's feelings about it. Like I said, I've been there 3 times. I've talked to people that I know, you and my team there, but I've also talked to some people there because I just talk to people, particularly like the people who own the Airbnbs where I stayed, that you set me up with.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And at the time, this was pre-war, so there wasn't anything to ask about. What do you think about the Russian invasion? Because that hasn't happened yet. But the question I had was, what do you think about Crimea? That's what I would ask people. And I know that you have a very pro-Ukrainian firm, and we talked about that. I don't want to get into that right now. But as I talked to other people, I heard different versions of what happened with Crimea. And it depends on whether they were pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian mindset. And I know, so I'm not asking you your opinion. I'm asking you, can you see the different opinions out there, right? The pro-Russian and the pro-Ukrainian. You hear both sides, right? You don't have to agree with them, but I'm just saying, you have both, and you have both in your own family.
You know what? With the war, the number of those that had some pro-Russian opinions, their number became less, and like there was a ridiculous statistics, from the shocking point of view, not from the bad point of view. That when the war started, Zelensky had 99% support of people. So you can imagine that when something like this happens, it unites people, and then like the number of people who were pro-Russian and including supported Crimea to be Russian, their number got smaller. But of course, you still have like opinions. Honestly, Crimea is such a complicated question because on the there are different opinions, and one of the opinions is also: do we really want Crimea back if there are already Russians living there? It's like, do you really want that? But then there's also I don't think this is about what people want. I think this is about keeping to the principles of not starting the war. Because if you start questioning, okay, this territory was someone else's territory at a certain point, then we can, it can start the whole change of the countries on the map of the world. And it's going to be, of course, endless war. And then this is the whole reason why after World War II, there was a pact that said, okay, we're not dividing countries anymore. We fix it as they are in current borders, and that's it. That's done. So I don't think this is about, even if you're right, and let's say we say, not if you're right, but I mean, even if there were, let's say, yes, 100% of people in Crimea, but does it really, gives the right to Russians to invade it?
Right.
I don't think so. Let
me tell you what I heard and just let you react to it. However you want. So on one hand, I'll say story A and story B. Right? Story A is tanks rolled in and Crimea was taken by force by Russia. Story A. Very abbreviated version, but that's kind of the story. Story B. A lot of people in Crimea are Russian. They identify as Russian. They wanted to be part of Russia rather than Ukraine. They had a vote, and they peacefully decided we'd rather be part of Russia. And we voted on it, and that's the majority came out. We want to be part of Russia, and we just moved over to Russia. Story A sounds like taken by force. Story B sounds like the people wanted that. How do you react to those two stories? Because that's what I was told, right? And so I'm trying to reconcile these two things.
So the thing about Russians, and I know that I'm not very objective about Russians, is that story B would never happen.
Let me ask you this. Was there a vote in Crimea?
They did, yes, in Crimea, they did the voting. But I mean, how can you do the voting? It's like
when there's tanks outside.
With the tanks, and they did also the voting in Zaporizhia, the part that they have, and then Lugansk and Donetsk, they also did the voting. But have you seen the voting? It's just people with guns coming to your house. It's like, hey, vote. what can you say?
So it wasn't like a what we would think of as an election where you go into a booth and no one can see what you're voting.
No, well, like certain limitations were done. Of course, that was also happening, like you were saying, but also like you need to take the whole context, because the thing is with Crimea, it has a lot of context, a lot of details and you really need to know them. Like for example, when they took over the Crimea, like a lot of people left who were pro-Ukrainian. So how come their votes? Do they recount their votes? And it's like, what's happening with them? Then a lot of people from Crimea were sent over to far Russia, and others were brought. So this is like the politics of Soviet Union. They did it all this time. They mixed up people.
So the population
don't self-identify. Yeah, so that they identify themselves. Oh, I'm Russian. If you talk to average like even a Bashkirian guy, like somewhere in the far part of Russia, they identify themselves as Russian. They don't remember and speak their languages. They just learn it, and then all the cultural heritage they have is like around singing songs, like that they don't understand anymore, and cooking some traditional meals. Yeah, that's it. So I would say that Russia inherited this Soviet Union very good and well-built systems of wiping the self-identity of people.
Do you think it's possible for someone here?
I've escaped your question pretty nicely, huh? With not choosing between two.
You talked around it for a while.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible, someone sitting here in the United States, to understand the complexities of Ukraine and Russia and Crimea and Zaporizhia?
I don't think that there is complexity. It's like it's the same question, like, you know, when you say during the Second World War, who was the aggressor and who was the victim? All of us agree it was like nationalistic and fascistic Germany, right? All of us agree. No one questions that. No one says, oh, you know, that's a very complicated question. Let's understand how it happened. It's as easy as that, I think, is that there is a country that attacked another country. For whatever reasons and purposes, there are always other methods, there are always other channels, and like there are other opportunities.
So for you, it comes down to, look, missiles went one way and not the other way.
Exactly.
Who's at fault?
Who is at fault? It is, yes. And yes, you can say, but I don't get it. It's like, you know, like there's a lot of Ukrainians in Russia too. And we can say, like, who is protecting Ukrainians in Russia? So let's go protect there. Like you can say, for example, Great Britain can say, there is a lot of British people in America. Let's go to America, protect them. How would that look to you? And then, like, for whatever reasons, they can also say...
example. And it wasn't liked.
Exactly.
That is part of our history, now you mention it.
And they can say, if you go back in history, America was, like, there were British colonies. Does it mean that Britain now has the rights for US? So, like, you see, if you go back to history long enough, you can find the rights of every nation for another nation. So this is like, you know, I stick to this. According to the most recent, like, agreements in the whole world after Second World War, in order to avoid World War III, were to fix everyone on their borders. I do accept that there are certain parts of people, like in Spain we know the Catalonia, and like in Ukraine you can question the Crimea if you want, like, even though I don't support this, but like you can question it as the one who doesn't have the sentiment. And then, like, there are a lot of, like, across the whole world, there are people that want their autonomies or they want to get separation. So I do accept that maybe the whole UN needs to work towards how we solve those questions in a proper way, fair to everyone, but definitely not with the war. Because war is like, you know, it's like when when you don't know how to agree with someone, so you just say, I'm stronger, so I'll take mine. And this is how Russia behaves.
If there's a settlement, a truce, an agreement, in some fashion, and the war stops, but perhaps Ukraine has to give up some regions that it previously had. And let's say that happens. Does Russia stop there, or do they go to Poland or the Baltic states? In your opinion?
I think they don't stop. I don't think they stop. I think that Putin is right now is a little bit delusional, and I think he wants to restore Soviet Union. And
do you think that that's the view of most Ukrainians?
I think so. Like, look, it's also another question from the context, because right now we see only the war that started right now. For us, the war started with the taking of Crimea, and we had a lot of East Ukraine fighting for a while. And then before that, we were always like, Russia did it to us through all our history. Not only Russia. There's also with Poland and with Austro-Hungarian Empire, some parts of Ukraine were part of that. But I mean, with the Russians, they always take Ukraine as their zone of influence. So I definitely think, even for example, let's say tomorrow we have a truce, and then they take over Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk, or whatever they have right now, right?
Southeast.
Yeah, Southeast, for example. So I think that in a couple of years, it's just a question of how many years are gonna pass till they go and take another part of Ukraine. And then till they get to the level of territories that they want to get to. I think Baltic countries are also in danger. I do think, and honestly, I've been to Latvia. There are a lot of Russians there. I mean,
sure.
And then this is...
they're former Soviets as well, right?
Latvian language is not almost the same as Russian.
Yeah.
Because in Ukrainian and Russian, yes, they're different, but they're also very similar.
I was just going to go into that.
Yeah.
So the last time I was there, and I want to say that was either 2019 or 2020, I don't remember, probably 2019, I guess. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We were walking in a park, and you had decided, because I was asking you, do you speak Russian more or Ukrainian more? Normally it was Russian, but you're like, we're trying to speak more Ukrainian, and you had switched to Ukrainian and for a while. And that while means 3 minutes. And I'm like, I'm listening, right? I'm like, you're speaking Russian again already. And you're like, how do you know? Like,
yeah, you can hear it.
Because they sound different,
This is a point where you have to say Ukrainian sounds better.
Yeah, clearly. So they sound different to me, knowing nothing of either language. So to me, that says they're far enough apart.
Yeah.
If you're a Russian speaker and you grew up in Russia,
understand.
Do you understand Ukrainian?
They say they don't understand us.
Yeah.
From what to the Russians I spoke, they say that, well, but you have to also know, for example, my mom is was born in Russia, but her village is just on the border with Ukraine. So, and when we went to visit there, it was before war, long before war, everybody was really speaking Ukrainian there. They were more speaking Ukrainian than Russian.
Right.
And then they were, of course, if you take the swearing language, it was all Ukrainian.
You have better swear words.
I don't think so. But one way or another, it was a Russian village, but they were speaking Ukrainian.
Right.
So you have to also, because we often talk about Russian language in Ukraine, but we never talk about Ukrainian language in Russia, or the whole Bashkirian language. I mean, honestly, from what I hear, but I might be just isolated to the certain context.
Yeah.
Is that I feel like Ukrainians are the most the country from the Soviet Union that is protecting their language the most.
It's also the biggest, right?
Latvian also, I can say Latvia is also very protecting right now, especially their language, and I think this is a good thing for them. I know this is not a popular opinion for the Russian speakers there, but I think that it is good to be overprotective of your language, because your language is your identity.
It's your culture. Yeah.
And it's your culture, yeah.
From a Western Europe or United States perspective, in terms of our foreign policy, there's a lot of discussion about, well, what you decide to do by way of foreign aid and how we get involved is largely determined by what you believe Putin's intentions are, right? Does he stop there In which case, hey, let's stop fighting and just draw some new lines and everyone walk away. I know that may not be a popular opinion, but there's one scenario. But if you believed in your heart of hearts, it doesn't stop there. It just keeps marching on.
The thing is, it's not even Putin's war. I think this is the thing that most of the people have to understand in Europe and in US. Because if it's not Putin, then it's someone else.
So a typical view for us is this is Putin's war and he's driving it forward. And you're saying no, it's a cultural thing. And
it's a cultural thing, and all Russians support. A lot of Russians support them. If right now, according to the most recent things I saw, that the level of war support is dropping in Russia too, because I get they're also like not happy with the sanctions and stuff. We do think in Ukraine that this is not Putin's war, and even if because during the first day we thought, okay, if Putin is killed, tomorrow the war is over, and maybe it would be the case. Right now we're saying, okay, even if Putin dies, the war continues. We don't think that it's gonna stop, honestly.
Yeah. So. Thank you for adding a lot of color to that. That was super interesting.
Yeah, but I felt like I was talking all the time. So
that was my goal.
It's like an interview.
That was my goal. Perfect. What if we find that Sophie didn't hit the record button?
I think you would hit it the second time because you were changing.
Right. What if I didn't do it?
Let's see. Oh shoot, it's not recording.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
No.
I'm kidding.